Welcome folks to the meeting, and good for the laughter. Must be a sign that we had our last meeting at the Friday. So there we go. You might be glad to be over. Can I just, while there is a chance at the end for comments, I would just like to open though with a couple of brief comments if I could. Firstly, Aileen, I just want to welcome you to our meeting. I've had a chance to congratulate you, and I'm sure many of the other, in fact, I'm sure Council has, when you took up the role, but it's my first chance to catch up with you in the new role. So it's great to have you here, and I've appreciated the conversation we've already had already, which is great. Thank you. And I look forward to making some assumptions about the risk committee and the new tronium, but look forward to us developing that together again. Donna, thank you for being available. I appreciate you need to be in Napier, so look, I would just encouraging myself, if not you, to make certain that we hear your voice. I'm very keen that in terms of the importance of some of the matters that are on the agenda, that we can actually hear you, which would be great. The other thing I also like to do is just mention my appreciation to staff. Again, through this training, in fact, delivered an increasingly improved quality of papers, if I can be blunt, and I'm deeply appreciative of that. It means that we're starting to better debate the issue of risk, and I think that's really, really important. And the other and fourth thing, given I've said this the last meeting, I just need to acknowledge, without quite knowing who isn't in standing, it shows that I haven't quite done my homework. Those that who was also their last meeting, the Audit and Risk Committee. Sandra, I know it's yours, and I just want to express my appreciation that all of you that have made choices around the elections for the input you've had. Sandra, if I could just pass to you, particularly my appreciation you're here. To be honest, I can't take it for granted that mayors always turn up to facilities that you have is great. So I'm deeply appreciative, and that is really, really superb. Thank you. So those are just some opening comments that I wanted to make, knowing that this is the last meeting for the training, which is always a wee bit significant. As I say to many people, I go out of business on the 8th of October. Let's see what happens with the new training.
Well, I think, Bruce, if that's the case, it's likewise reciprocated that we really appreciate the leadership you've shown in the role as chair of this particular committee. I think the Audit and Risk Committee has been a very important part of the process of council. I think it's absolutely necessary, and we've actually resolved some quite contentious issues at this table as a collective responsibility. So I think that's really awesome. I think it speaks volumes for the integrity of the council and this committee and your leadership as well. So I'd just like to thank you and everybody involved in it.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
It's great to be here. I enjoy it. So if you're getting value out of it, that's even better. That's tremendous. But can we have a look at the agenda, please? I've just had to make a slight change, if I could note that. I've had a request for a public forum, which is that the Chair and Chief Executive, Mr. Noonan of the Coromandel Independent Living Trust, has requested that he be able to present at the public forum. We obviously have a matter under public excluded that we have to consider. And I have agreed that he can address us in public forum. Unfortunately, he's not available until 11 o'clock. So I'm going to suggest, I had no other notifications of requests for public forum, that we just rearrange the agenda to accommodate Mr. Noonan. So our plan is we work through until about 10:45. Have a break, our planned morning tea break finishes at 11, and we will open the public forum with Mr. Noonan at 11 o'clock, and then we'll just carry on with our business, see what we get to. That is my intention. So if I can just note that, otherwise I think we are absolutely fine. Right, in terms of good form, do we have any apologies? It's like a full muster, which is tremendous. Everybody can stay. I'll try myself. In time, whatever the right word is, Terry. You guys know where I'm going. Public forum, we know we have rearranged for 11 o'clock this morning. I haven't been notified of any items that are not on the agenda. Are there any matters that I should be considering as part of the total agenda? There isn't. That's good. Are there any matters of interest in the items today that people should raise with us and declare? Okay? Good. Great. Right, can we look at the minutes, please, of our last meeting, which seemed a long time ago. If I can say that, it's the 26th of May. Is that our last meeting? No? Is that really our last meeting? Yes, it seems like a long time ago. Anyway, there we go. So, from the chair, I'd like to move that we confirm the minutes. Do I have a second, please?
I have it a second.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any conversation on those or errors? Sorry, I should really be asking for in terms of those matters, please. No? Good. Well, I'm going to put the motion in that we confirm these minutes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. Right, Baku, thank you for that. 9:07 and I'm at 9:20 in terms of my agenda, so I just want the credit now. Can I say something? I need to apologise. If you have mistreated your phone, things like your microphone break and I'm having trouble turning the sound down, so I have to apologise if it should ring. I haven't have it here so that I can get off really fast. I apologise in advance if you should do that. Baku, we're in your hands, buddy.
Right, through the chair, look, I just want to point out, I've got my new stuff here. They're just coming because I wanted them to see the fruits of their labour go to and come to these reporting, so be here alongside me. I'm starting with the risk report, and table is read. There's three key things here for me. Provided an update on our strategic risk actions, and these actions are there's good progress being made here. We've had 7 actions that have been closed, and these relate to strategic risks, asset management, health and safety, and staff recruitment and retention. I've undertaken the deep dive in the LTP capital program delivery. There have been a number of actions here that management have identified, and all of them make sense to me. And the third thing is I've provided a risk improvement plan for you, or an update on the risk improvement plan. And so my strategy in terms of getting back to basics is paying off. That's my sense across the organisation. And we are revising that plan to really reflect our next kind of lead that we take in relation to managing and monitoring our strategic risks and operational risks. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Baku. Appreciate that. Look, I again started by thanking staff for their work. This is one of these papers that really has picked up the speed for us, so I appreciate that. So look, I would like to just give the committee a chance to take this essentially section by section. So if I could refer firstly members to page 17 of our agenda, which has got the overall strategic risks that we have been monitoring on an ongoing basis. I wonder if anybody would like to raise questions about those sections as they exist at this stage. I do. I hear laughter in the sorry, Brian. I do. I'd like to have a
Bruce, I do have a question.
Okay, well, go first, please.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Go for it, mate. This is about page 17 of the overall risk framework. Yeah, bring it, mate. Go for it.
Number one is staff recruitment and retention. The impact of the inability to attract and retain staff. That obviously is a real problem because it's number one. And what do you think we can actually do to improve that situation?
We've, through the chair, we have got actions that have come out of that deep dive assessment. And then those actions around people strategies, people capability manager has a group of actions that she's undertaking to kind of manage that from, and it's quite broad. There's a whole lot of, there's no silver bullet for this one. There's a number of things that they can do to attract and maintain.
So it's a work in progress.
It definitely is.
Raylene, is there anything that you'd like to add to this? This must be, I mean, you'll know this from across the sector, it's a big issue, so Gary, it's right on the buttons of this, is probably a number one.
Yeah, so I think it's complex, and the latest report shows we're still tracking quite a high turnover rate. And I sort of personally take comfort knowing that the staff leaving today actually started looking 6 months ago, and there's a lag period. There's been some turmoil in the organisation, lots of position changes in the senior leadership, so there's going to be a bit of turmoil, and I guess that's a given. But I am concerned about the whole sector impact, and recently we did a staff survey to have a look at the things that trouble staff. And you know what, it lines up with the rest of the sector, and that is local government hasn't got a very good reputation, well, government and local government. We're seeing decreased levels of trust in the establishments for a whole range of reasons, and this place is no different here to what it is in the rest of the country. So I think, can I suggest that as elected members, there's I guess there's not much that's within your control to assist that, but could I suggest giving staff a little bit more loving could possibly be the one thing you could do.
I like it. So, thank you, yes, Gary.
Yeah, so Aileen, some of the discussions I've heard is that government salary packages are more attractive than local government. Is that true? Are you finding that?
I think that's, yes, it is true, and certainly MFE are attracting staff at high salaries, but of course then you have to go in Wellington and then you're subject to the whole payment machine, so salaries isn't the whole part of the picture. People come here, they get out of bed in the mornings to help their communities. You don't get that same sense of satisfaction when you work in the central government department, so while that's part of the picture, I don't think that's all of the picture.
So part of the picture, the reason for leaving is for other opportunities outside the local government or inside the local government? They're going to private or?
I saw some data yesterday that shows planners are stepping out after about 3 years, and out of the sector, out of the local government and out of the government sector into private consultancies and so on.
I think my little perspective from elsewhere in the country, Terry, is almost at all levels of local government we're challenged with resourcing. At the moment, they're not somewhat have been filled, but at the moment, probably as of about 3 weeks ago, there were 9 vacancies at chief executive level, let alone the areas of local government where we know there have been pinch points like building consent officers and inspectors, etc., and those sorts of things that are there. This, I think, sometimes with our risk work, we also think about, some people talk about velocity, don't they? What is the velocity behind this in the sense of what's its trend? And I suspect the thing that will be a theme that we come back to, I suspect a wee bit later in the report, is actually 314. And actually what's going to happen over the course of the next 12 months, particularly with access to 3 water stuff. Now I appreciate we're probably a wee bit not allowed against that in terms of our arrangements here, but that, for instance, is going to bring a significant change again to the local government landscape, for which we perhaps need to consider that this is a risk which is medium, but actually its propensity is to go north rather than south, I think, at this stage. And I want to pick up on your point about culture. I'm always interested to understand how we as a committee can support management deal with these issues. I mean, this is primarily an issue for Aileen as our chief lead. So what are your thoughts about actually how is it just showing up? I wonder if you wanted to amplify that one, because actually it's a really key point.
Yeah, so that's sort of summarising, I guess. Local government staff, it's not an easy job when you're out there every day and the community always expect the worst of you, and there's not often particularly planners and consent planners, it's not often you get a, hey, that was well done. It's always late, or it's not good enough, or it's too detailed, or, you know, they don't actually get a lot of that positive feedback, although they obviously do the times when they do really, really good jobs, nobody tells them that. So, yeah, I guess as the trust in local government has decreased, there's more and more of that on a day-to-day basis. And there is burnout for sure amongst staff that are facing that on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, and I think the culture is set at this table. How this table operates is how that then flows down into the organisation. Management either shield staff from that or embrace vision and direction. And I think elected membership can do an awful lot by helping set that vision and direction and keep the entity trundling along in that direction. But I think also when you have those complaints from the public, that there's always three sides to every story. And staff generally, my experience in local government is staff are generally 95% of the time right. But sometimes that's not good enough because you're still guilty if you're 5% wrong. So, I guess just bearing that in mind with interactions with staff and just supporting them and I guess that the risk aversion level is important. If you want innovation out of staff, they've got to be able to make mistakes and not be battering the head for it. And it's pretty difficult when you're in a consent or a regulatory type role being allowed to be wrong sometimes. That's my 5 cents worth. But where I came from, we did all sorts of innovative things, but we did break things occasionally. It just comes with the territory.
So can I comment? Yeah, this is really important, okay? Most of the issues I get around planning, and I get them all the time, and they don't come with a good reputation, unfortunately, because this is when people do most of their big business with councillors that want to build a house or do an alteration, and that interaction with planning often turns into a drama, and I get all the calls all the time. So there's a reputation thing there we need to change, and that is why they need to make those decisions. And I speak to Brian all the time. He comes and talks to me and tells me the issues, and I understand them, but the customer doesn't understand them, and they'll write me some pretty long emails about their life that they had experience through council. So if we can have more face-to-face or agree that the planner stays with the consent to the end of it or something like that, because often through the process, a planner moves, somebody else comes on, they don't know what they're doing, it stretches out and it turns into a pretty long problem. So that's one of the areas I'd like to improve, that interface between planners and the customer. How are you going to do it? I don't know, but I think it's really important.
Just a comment further too, I think the recognition that actually a lot of the decisions we make while we're making the decisions, it's actually the long arm of government reaching through us to make those decisions.
Yeah, but they don't get that discussion.
They don't understand that, yeah.
They don't even interact with them. They talk to a consultant or somebody else, a third party. So there's no face-to-face to have that discussion. That's really important for those people to come at the end of that experience and say, hey, that was a really good experience. We went through it. We discussed it. We don't get that discussion now. You used to get it in the old days. And we get it from Howrah, from some of their people, so I think we're an issue.
I would agree with what order there.
John, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. John, then Cedric.
Just wrapping up a little bit on what Aileen said, councillors need to be careful because when it goes bad with council, ratepayers can often see councillors as the means to beat up the staff, you know, that's a fact. Luckily under Rob and with Aileen so far, I've been able to have interaction with staff when there is a problem and actually listen to what the actual issue is and then go back to the ratepayer and explain how things actually work. It's too easy to pick up and beat up on staff. And I also take on loving staff a little bit more. I have made it a practice with Rob and with Aileen that when staff do a good job, I will actually send an email to the CEO passing on my thoughts and actually get it passed on to the staff member involved because they do a good job. And yes, occasionally things could have been a little better, but there's always a human element. So I do think that councillors showing some leadership, some appreciation of staff when they do a good job, simply by sending an email, which takes 2 minutes, is not a bad thing to do. Those are my thoughts.
I'd just like to respond to the issue that Terry's raised, and I think our staff do an outstanding job in addressing the many, many problems that we have with people trying to struggle with our district plan. I think the district plan is a huge issue, but it's far too expensive to deal with. And Aileen's absolutely right, we're getting more and more from government all the time. But I found one of the best things we can do, because there's a multiple group of people involved here on any one project. Sometimes the agent is talking to the client and different things going on. So the best thing I found was actually getting all parties in the same room together when a project gets bogged down, so everybody can hear the same thing. And so, I just think we've got a brilliant team dealing with the issues that come across the table. Yes, you'll get the random ones, and of course people will always contact you and lobby you as an elected representative. They do that all the time. But you've got to just know how to deal with that, be neutral, and just try and find a solution to the problem and not engage in doing anything else, in my view. Murray?
I was just going to say, I think a lot of it's understanding, and I go back to what Aileen just said, liquefaction. Now, every builder, every planner is now on liquefaction. It's the flavour of the month from central government. You try to tell someone on the peninsula here about liquefaction, that's down in Christchurch. Now, they don't want to know, I know there's a big project in Whitianga, he's going on about liquefaction, he reckons he pulled the pin, we've just done one on the plains and taken all that geotech for liquefaction, but they still go on about liquefaction. We never had it. And Terry, I'm sorry, but I'm not looking straight in the eye and say, a person without any planning experience or building experience trying to get a consent now should not be there because it's too complicated. And that's the problem. We've got amateurs now playing a professional field. I've been staff on a lot of that. And they just don't understand. And I'm sorry, I've been in the game 40 years.
Yeah, but Murray, if you're building a decking that's done to code, you don't need 10 consultants to do it. That's the problem.
I'm getting way off. We've got Clyde here, I want to bring this back, but Sally, you've got a point.
My point is that I think around the table we need to be careful about what we ask for, because I think we often ask for things without understanding how much work involved and how the consequences, and then someone does a huge amount of work, comes back, and we've forgotten that we even asked for it. So I think that, and we suddenly decided something else is more important. So I think we need to be really careful to support the plan and be really aware of our part in assisting workload.
Thanks for that, Sally. That's really helpful, and I appreciate the discussion, by the way. And I'm not, when I say I want to close it down, I'm not being critical of what's been said. But actually, Gary, you started a very good conversation, and it reflects something that is really important. We're stroking wrong. Well, there are challenges to keeping a full complement of staff. Okay. Aiden's raised I guess the role that we as a council can play in as governors in supporting her staff. I doubt that I would want us to suddenly have a program of appreciation, because that sounds a bit unauthentic, but I hope we can be authentic and appreciate the work that is done. And actually, what we've just had a discussion, which is one of those pinch points, planning, consenting, and the relationship of our ratepayers to that process, which actually we shouldn't lose this as a conversation between now and the next quarterly report, whenever we might have that party. But actually, I hate to say it, we're in that season now where it feels like it's kicking down the road, but this should be an issue for the new council to talk about in its induction process.
Can I take a shot with you? I actually think we should have an appreciation program. And the reason I say that is for the very reason that John elucidated. He finds he didn't go hunting, but he had an opportunity where we could express his gratitude and appreciation, and he did that. Thing is, if we all make a bit more of an effort, because we can be incredibly lazy, if we all made a bit more of an effort and took the opportunity to do exactly that, show our thanks and appreciation on a range of things, but where it can be clearly articulated, then I think we should be encouraged to do that, and it's all part of that communications program in my mind.
I don't think we need to write a program to do that. We do that. When we see things done well, we accept it and we note it. I think it's something that we do. It's part of our life. When people do good things, you mention it. You don't have to go and, or have to do that.
So I think we've got,
It's a good thing to do.
thanks, Terry. So I think got some varied views, but I think we are probably agreed. Sandra, I take your correction appropriately. I think my key point is do it authentically.
Yeah.
That's really my key point, rather than actually, have I said, thank you to start. I want us to make certain that we do it, but that we do it in an authentic way. Which we come to. Having said that, there is a challenge clearly set out here from Aileen, and really, we can all practice appreciation from this point on, we've been doing it already. But actually, there's obviously clearly some questions, Aileen, around the service connection between us as councillors, with our staff, with the ratepayer, which would warrant some further exploration. I don't know how that affects the way you might keep the risk schedule going, but I think hopefully in some way, Parker, you would capture some of this as part of our risk discussion in terms of the actual, sorry, Martin, I'll give your hands up so I can see.
No, I'm just carrying on.
Is there anything you want to say to this matter, or do you got something else?
I was just wanting to talk about the risk treatment plan. There's an item there, I was just curious.
Oh, okay, right, no, we'll see what comes of that, if you just hold that, Mark, that'll be okay. So that's great, I appreciate that, really good discussion. I'm still on page 17, Mark, you're wanting to deal with the risk treatment for the long-term plan and program delivery?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to raise one point, and it might be a wee bit controversial, but I think our risk of poor governance decision-making probably needs to be, in a sense, heightened, not because we are at greater risk of making poor decisions, but I think in the context of the environment where, for good reason, we have a democratic process about how to score elections, there is naturally a hiatus while we induct, while we get used to everybody, but a good-looking induction program coming up to be debated reasonably soon. Actually, we need to have the concerted sense both of the risk and the objective of actually getting people all around the table so that we can start, making good decisions. I suspect it should be a short-term issue. Well, not ever, it's almost an issue, I suppose. A short-term issue, Paku, but it's one that if we recognise as a risk, we should manage to. And I would just like to raise that on this page as well. Right, thank you. Now, Martin, yes, you've got a point to make about the deep dive that Paku and the team did into the long-term
Yes,
capital program.
Top of page 22, for the long-term planning process, it talks about developing a communication and engagement plan for the next LTP process, including treaty funds, and that's due for completion on the end of the year. Is that a plan that elected members could get to look at? Assuming that I am an elected member.
Unfortunately, various things today, Martin, so that's fine.
Yes, through the chair, yes. All the communication plans do get attached to the reports, so we do circulate that. So yes, whoever is elected will see that.
Okay, thank you.
Aye, thanks, Robin.
Oh, right, okay. So Parker, it's about the, on page 21, there's a table, and LTP funding has a high risk, and I note point 3 there says ensuring all out-of-cycle budget requests are considered by councillors with full understanding of any possible impacts. I think that needs to be all elected members rather than just councillors, because I recognise that a lot of the out-of-cycle budget requests come from community boards. So it'd be useful if they were understood at all of the levels of the elected arm.
Cool.
Thank you, Rob. Let's take that on advice and open to it. Terry.
The long-term plan and the capital program delivery has really been one of my big babies through the years. So I'm seeing this as high, and I think it's fantastic, Paku, and I think I like the ideas of getting these plans to a manageable budgeted timeframe. So I look forward to seeing those things being addressed and moving forward. So I'm just really supporting that 100%. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Terry. Any other comments folk would like to make? Just a couple from me, Paku. I must confess, I tend to read this more as long-term planning and capital program delivery, and you might want to correct me that it's more one than the other. At this stage, it is correct to be looking towards the LTP in our processes because it's going to hit us soon enough. There's no two ways about it. Do we have a project lead and a sponsor for the whole LTP program?
We certainly have a lead in terms of the manager strategy. And that's who will be leading this, and we do have a project in place across that.
Yes.
And there are stakeholders across the organisation that are part of that.
Yeah.
Of which I am from the risk perspective.
Yeah. I'm wanting to, I'm probably state the obvious, but my presumption is ELT have a strong role in sponsoring this on behalf of their lead teams, and that they are taking collective responsibility for timely delivery of an ELT, of an LTP.
Yes, that's it.
That's what I need to know.
If it assists, it's just been set as one of my KPIs.
Terry. Oh, who's Terry? Murray? Oh, geez.
Just going back to page 18, in terms of Three Waters reform, that's probably going to, well, who knows what it's going to do, but could accelerate after Christmas and happen very quickly. Are we in the space with all our valuations up to date? And I know it's the time evaluations, and obviously a lot of the desktop. Are we actually check them and make sure our assets are up to date so that if it does happen, we're away? We've got no risk of not claiming some assets and all the rest of it?
Good question.
Is it a finance question or an engineering question?
It's a combination of both.
Management plan. Asset register question.
Bruce, is it a question that you can start with?
Yes, through the chair, it's a question for both across infrastructure and finance. Yes, so I believe our asset valuations and all that data is as up to date as it can be. Every year it gets better and better, but we do those processes every year across the finance, infrastructure and asset data things. So yeah, I believe they're up to date as much as it can be across the range of assets, the thousands of assets that we have.
Can you squeeze any more in there?
Was the bit that you wanted to squeeze more into, which would be great. Sorry, sorry, Murray, you get it.
I find, sorry Bruce, but I haven't got a lot of confidence. So someone actually checking that if this happens, that we have got everything in the list. And I know there's a huge amount of assets, and I accept that, but if we're going to transfer assets, then we need to have a pretty good inventory of those assets and a pretty good valuation of those assets.
Yep, so we do have a very good idea of all our assets and what we have.
We have a very good inventory.
Yes, we have a very good inventory. So we have an asset data system that all the Three Waters assets are contained in. We have condition assessments that are done periodically by, we use Veolia to do all our above ground asset condition assessments. So we have a lot of processes that we do every year and periodically to make sure that we've got everything in the system. And everything when we do projects, there's a huge process every year that basically takes the full year to get all the information that gets from new projects into our asset data systems to make sure that they're getting valued every year subsequent to that. Audit New Zealand are obviously auditing us multiple times through the year and every year to make sure that we've got everything in there. We have independent consultants that we use for reviewing and assisting our unit rates and our valuations of things to make sure that the values are appropriate and current to date in the market for replacement values. So yeah, I'm confident that we've got a lot of processes in place and we've got everything contained.
Do you have an addendum with assets which are going to be coming onto the books? Through transmission or whatever?
Yes, John, so through the chair, yes, so there's an asset vesting process. So when subdivisions are done, all the assets come through on a vested assets list. And so all the details up to our standard of specification from asset data and valuation data all comes through every year. Those get handled the same as when we're doing our own process.
I'm talking about those where a consent's been lodged for something like that. You've got an anticipation of what might be coming forward. I'm thinking of something which keeps a bit of a running tally of the things that are going to come on stream and be included, not ones that are included.
So generally we don't we have an idea of what's coming through the subdivision, but we wouldn't get down to an asset level of anticipating what assets are going to come until we actually get all the as-built done, because obviously things are constructed, things change, so we wait for the as-built, the best of assets list, and then those two things combined together, along with the spatial data, go into our asset data system.
Sorry, Murray, I just want to check, because we said it was both physical assets, Bruce, and it's also financial. So Donna, was there anything you wanted to add to what Bruce had said before I go back to Murray?
Yes, I just want to reiterate that this year especially, we have done a really extensive review of our valuation process and also of our unit rates. We've had additional work done around our unit rates to make sure that they are right before we start applying the CAF. We've also had our valuation this year as at 30th of June, so it is as up to date and current as it will be. And you will see that there has been some really big increases in the value of our assets, especially the three waters, as a result of this process.
Thank you, Donna. Sorry,
I think that answers my question.
Yeah, you answered the question.
Yeah, I just got another question for Paku. I just like to comment on page 17, the climate change discussion. It says inadequate preparedness and risk mitigation activity leading to regional economic loss and community vulnerability. Climate change, it's sort of driven by the government. Are we behind the 8 ball or something? Is that what I'm reading in that space?
I wouldn't say we're behind the 8 ball, no.
Right.
I think we've got plans around that. So
yeah. Shoreline management plan and other things we're doing a bit ahead of the game, I thought. I just that comment.
That's a description of the risk,
yeah.
Not the state.
Right.
Okay, I want to be clear about that.
Okay.
If we don't address the risk, we will be inadequately.
So we've got into a deep dive to look into it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we did that, July 2021. Yeah. I suggest Parky, I want to show Terry what that is if you want to at some stage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, more questions for folk from this? Thank you for that. I just, so you can be comfortable, by the way, that, sorry, if I have my phone on, I suppose, you've got a plan, you've got ownership, and we've got responsibility. That's great, we need to know that. Can I say, Parker, that would be something that I think would be in the scope in terms of reference of this committee, that we get quarterly report on the progress of the LTP development, not the policy issues, but actually that we understand the plan, we understand what are the risks associated with its development in achieving a long-term plan. So it's at that project or program level. It's not the detail which you'll do through your workshops and policy committees and blah, blah, blah. Can I just ask one question though, which is a wee bit outside of, but not unrelated to the LTP, we've got an annual plan before that. And it's our third annual plan since the last LTP, therefore it is going to be the most distant from our original estimates. Have you, in your work in considering this, thought about our controls and approach to the annual plan for 23-24?
Quick answer, no.
Okay.
So yes, we need to do that.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that should be what I actually think. Murray, going back to your sort of the intent behind the question around asset management, 23-24 plan, I suspect, is going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. It is across the sector. That's what I'm saying. It is a sort of an ism from the sector, and I'm not certain my team's Coromandel would be exempt from this being a difficult annual plan for the new council to deal with. Whether it's the indicators around cost, whether it's indicators around delivery, program delivery, we're back into our, what you've got here in the LTP, whether it's interest rates, inflation, there's a whole bunch of stuff there that quite in revaluations, Donna, our appreciation will go up massively, potentially. There is a bunch of stuff here that's going to really hit us. And I would suspect, I'm talking to this, I mean, I'm probably just saying that isn't to get it out here.
Appreciation.
Well, it is. I mean, I'm just reflecting that revaluations have really hit a lot of councils this year. Yeah.
Those technical components is it's going to be a tricky political landscape because we've got new elected members.
That's right.
A whole induction program.
Yeah.
Still running the annual report. and starting the LTP, with potential for elected members to want to do potentially things that are outside of the significant engagement phase and take into an LTP amendment. So that political overlay is going to be quite complex.
And the work in the audit services bill places the NTU in a particular position relative to our plans for 3 waters in our final year.
And RE reforms will be.
You got it. So I just look, I don't. Thank you.
We got a sense of that in the last audit plan.
Yeah.
A bit of a sense of that disruption.
Yeah.
And the works delivery that came through in the last audit plan. So yeah, totally see it coming through even stronger.
So thank you, Sandra. All I'm wanting to reflect is from a risk perspective, it would be useful to know that we've got a sort of an equivalency in terms of the program and approach in recognising that that'll hit the new council then we want to participate. I would suspect, Donna, that you're wanting to have some form of bringing things together probably around about December, if not early in the new year. So that's not that far away for us all.
So potentially this can be one of the first lessons that we're in.
That would be great. Right, Parker, was anything else with the risk report? Sorry, but having given myself the commentator's curse of getting 70 minutes early into it, about 27 hours after when I should have finished. Is there anything else with the risk report you'd like to raise? Thank you. Appreciate that. Can we go to the assurance report? Oh, sorry, I need to then deal with the resolution, don't we?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll put the motion on the list. Favor, please. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. Appreciate that, Sandra. Great way to do it. I don't know what passed, but that's good. Okay. Can we move to the assurance?
I'll move the next resolution.
Right. Can we? We will debate that. Can we move to the assurance report, please?
Through the chair, the people and capability, key operational process, overall robust processes and controls are in place for that, across that. We've also looked at the internal audit program going forward. Unfortunately, just through timing, I think that's the recommendations around that. So seeking your approval of that assurance audit plan. And I would say from a business development and improvement perspective, there's a big focus on our significant finance system project for my business partner in there, so they're fully engaged in that. Questions?
Thank you for that, Paku. Is there any questions folks would like to raise around the assurance? Because it's actually one that we shouldn't go over too quickly, but it is actually, for us as the government, is the chance to get some assurance that what we think is in play is actually in play.
Just one quick one, just the procurement and contract management with the TCDC, this is on page 27, has been assigned to share CoLab Waikato Council shared service. Is that program training staff and has that been introduced and used? Is that working?
So through the chair, we have a shared resource that came on board a couple of weeks ago. And that person, the expectation is that we will get them across staff in terms of training and procurement.
Oh, yes. Right. So yeah, that's going to start, does it? That's the process. Okay, thank you.
Look, I probably have some questions, but could I, in terms of the program, because we've been asked to approve the forward assurance program, can I, and I want to sow the seeds of this idea rather than say it must be on the program. But Paku, I'm quite genuine in saying with you and your team's advent, we've got an improved process both around risk management and internal audit. Could I suggest, and it be considered, because it might cost us a wee bit, that in 23-24 we consider a risk maturity review. Probably either a program you would do or even potentially done externally, that we actually say, are we doing this right? I mean, we spend a lot of money now doing it. I mean, we're all here today. But actually, I think going back to Sandra's point, we've got a sensitivity for money, which I appreciate that comment. I'd like us to perhaps do a level of making certain that we are delivering as would be expected, consistent with good professional standards. Also addresses one of the outstanding points from the auditors as well. But I think if we're a good reflective committee, we want to know how we're doing all that stuff. So I'd like to put that there as an idea. I'm not saying it has to be there. You'll need to think about could it be done. Probably have a chat with Aileen and Co as to whether that's possible. So I just leave that as a seed in your thoughts. Any other questions for Gerard? Can I go to the motion then, please, which is done, which is if you receive the report, can you approve the summary? Thank you, Sandra. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Robin. The motion, all those opposed, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carry. Chair, the health and safety report, please.
Morning,
guys. How are you?
Good,
Morning,
thanks.
right?
Thanks, everyone. So long again.
You can see you back. Bring your hands, give us a take out to your paper, please.
Yeah, so health and safety report. I'll take the report as read, but there's probably a few key things. Probably no things I'd like to just reiterate. The first one being we've included events and activities on council property, as you'll have seen, to our nasty 9 critical hazards. There's a bit of commentary there, but yeah, I think it's obviously the fact that it's in there, I think it's pretty diligent that we include that. Yeah, any questions on that? But yeah, you'll see that coming through in the reporting. Yeah, from now on.
Okay, thank you for that. Want to say, can I say again, really improved reporting here and a stronger sense of it. I just want to remind the members of the committee that as officers, our role is to be essentially at that level of do we have the systems in place, what assurance do we have that our health and safety systems are actually working. And this does give us pretty good insight as far as that's concerned. So members, do you have questions for Steve and his team?
No.
You're pretty comfortable?
Well, it's all here.
Right, look, I primed actually Steve Bryan to answer my first question. I'm going to always start with a laugh. Firstly, I'm really encouraged in terms of the nasty 9, Steve, that you've been able to get ELT sponsorship with each of those big risks. I just wonder, and I primed you for this, Brian. I wonder if you just tell me what does that actually mean? If I'm looking at personal confrontation and I see your name, what can I expect from the sponsor?
Yeah, it's exciting. The credit really goes to the program team. The team program was really happy, but personal confrontation was the one that we decided to go first. So Steve and I met having a workshop with the staff and talked through the overall risk assessment. So that's essentially looking at the event or the incident that we would be concerned about, the confrontation, what some of the causes or inputs would be for that and consequences and where we can mitigate. So the plan is to, we've had a real high level look at the methodology and we've planned with key staff that would be most affected by this risk. So it's our customer services staff, our compliance staff, library staff that run a workshop next, we're hoping early October and have their input into that closed-line assessment. And from there we'll include some kind of key actions and processes that we'll take away. So it's certainly one that I was really happy on and happy to be allocated with the ELT sponsor because it's the one that concerns me in the regulatory space. So, no, the team is trying to do just fantastic. It's been really easy on my time, really well communicated. So.
That means also you have some responsibility for its completion, is that right?
I will be absolutely over not only just the key actions and the delivery of that, but also we've also talked about as incidents come up, the key sponsor will be made aware of this, even if those incidents outside my group. I've got this kind of wide portfolio now as an example for that. So, yeah, so there's a bit of consistency to our approach, making sure they've got some key ownership at the executive table. We're all responsible, but I'll be the one making
Great, thank you, Brian. Look, just in relationship to those nasty 9 Donna, I was just wanting to check, probably I should be able to remember all the key risks. Can you just describe to me what does asset failure mean in our context of health and safety? So one that's got your name against it. Can you hear us okay, Don?
Oh, sorry, were you talking, were you talking to me? Okay, no, yeah, that is quite hard, it is quite hard to hear. Could you just repeat that?
Yeah, look, Donna, Brian just explained to me what he's doing as sponsor of one of the nasty 9 risks, and that, in this case, public confrontation. I just wondered if you could help me, or remind me, quite frankly, of what are we dealing with in terms of asset failure?
I think we haven't got, to be honest, we haven't got into the detail of it yet, but I think it's around, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but it's going to be around things like like damage to properties, vehicles, things like that. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So asset failure is basically, I mean, there's the whole asset side of things you touched on before, and I guess there's the health and safety aspect to that. Asset prone buildings, for example, it's making sure we've got all those kind of risk covers. We've got a lot of infrastructure up there, walls and airfields and things like that. We need to make sure they're up to scratch from a health and safety perspective, alongside the asset management perspective. So it's all those checks and balances, I guess.
So it is quite fair, but it certainly, I mean, I think the critical point is it comes from the perspective of the person, the health and safety, the worker in the building, or the standing on the wall, and indeed Steve's the public as well, correct?
Sure.
Yeah, right. Good.
Sure. The likelihood of those is usually quite low, but the consequence very high.
Yeah, obviously, mate. No, that's good. Thank you. Well, I've got another question, but Martin, you've got one.
So halfway down page 35 says TCD support and fleet vehicle GPS reports regularly reviewed. And I'm just wondering about these significant overspeed incidents followed up accordingly.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, we've got a whole lot of reporting around our full and fleet vehicles. We've got sort of, I guess, levels where current points where risk where that report will be escalated. So we have I don't want to say the numbers, but certain levels where we go to the team leader or to myself, and then the leadership team have one month having the leadership team. So I guess just having all those steps in place that they get followed up on based on their severity and their frequency as well. But it's not just one-off; it's also trend-based.
Right.
So that's all tied into it. Yeah.
So that's basically saying if you're travelling 10 kilometres and you're doing a minute and a half, then obviously that's significantly over the speed limit.
Yeah, we get real-time speed reporting. Yeah, and it's sustained speed, for example, there's the school zone, it's back into that as well. How many times a day? So yeah, there's a lot of text reporting, but essentially it boils down to a risk point score which we get every month, and yeah, get to follow up. Team leaders follow up their own teams and fleet vehicles. We do with the full cars, and anything escalated, we'll chase that.
Foxy go to the don't go fast enough.
Right. Can I, any other questions for Steve, the team? Just ask one question, please, in terms of the incidents. I noticed the incident yesterday. Are we subject to any further external investigation over that?
So the airfield incident, as you said in the commentary there, it wasn't actually at the airfield, but because the person was, so it's the Ngāti highway.
Oh, okay, sorry, it was on the highway, I agree. Yeah.
So private plane, single pilot, single occupant, crashed into the Gala ones there, you probably would have seen on the front page of the Herald. So, yeah, not on the airfield itself, but, sorry.
Oh,
it's a fine.
I'll have a Waikato.
You're free today.
But bringing in the planes into, what about when a plane actually goes into a wastewater pond?
So,
which has occurred.
So probably answering both questions in one. With our airfields, so for that incident we had an obligation to report to the Civil Aviation Authority because he took off and was landing at the Thames airfield, which is straightforward. They will complete their own investigation as they do, whether or not we'll hear anything from them. Some regulators, that's, quite often that's the case. They'll investigate it, they'll be happy with it. In terms of the local site hazards at the airfields, as you can imagine, the civil aviation industry in general is very heavily regulated. We've got a whole lot of checks and balances in terms of how do they communicate and notify those localised hazards with pilots through notice to airmen and all sorts of other things. So for our airfield, that was part of my investigation. I talked to a facilities manager and say, hey, how do pilots know that the power line's there, the oxidisation ponds, all sorts of things. That's all listed in that documentation. So any pilot taking it from our airfield will see.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and looking into the marine gear bombing, there's there's power lines to the east, there's oxidation ponds to the south, all those things are listed there.
Yeah.
So they're well aware of those things, and I was comfortable with that process.
That risk is being mitigated by Powerco now saying that they will underground it.
Okay.
So that was minimal, but
Wow.
Yeah, but from our perspective.
This is 500 feet at the threshold, so pilot error.
So from our perspective,
Take the fence down too.
head on our health and safety.
In the road.
So the critical thing is you're already saying we've noted this to make certain that we are clear or in the clear, if I can call it that way, relative to this incident, which is, as you say, wasn't actually on the airfield, but it's relevant for whether the information facilities assessment airfield, which we're the persons there, is okay.
In short, that it's being compliant with all the required information.
Yeah,
exactly. I think
safeguards.
Because it's notifiable for a regulator, it's the reason he's able to notify officers. If anything gets, notified to a regulator, and yet that we've got to check. But obviously, we'll wait and see what the CAA investigation report says if we even see one.
Yeah. That's really helpful. Okay. Just one final question, which does relate to inductions. I suppose it comes in later. I was just looking at the planning program on page 38, which is the A3 sheet. Second bottom one, you've got resourcing there, which is safety leadership development. In the coming quarter, or the current half year, I should say, that's up to December 23, you've got due diligence refresher. I just want to ask the obvious, that includes new elected members, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's what it's sort of saying. Waiting for the new elected members to come through and do that training part of their obviously overall induction. Yeah.
Great, that is really super. Any other questions for the team? There are none here. Can we move to the recommendations, please? Recommendation, which is that we receive the risk insurance report. I'll move that. Move second, please. Yep. Thank you, Sally. Motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carry. Thank you. I appreciate it. Right, so look, I'd like us to move to the Audit New Zealand audit plan for the year. There's almost a preliminary as we then get into the annual report. Carl, welcome to the table again. We appreciate you're here. You've been with us through the course of training. So if you could give us an idea of the plan, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chair. We're just going to start in reverse order. We don't need to do this afterwards. I've been asked a lot of questions, so I just wanted to thank the committee and some management for working together on audits and the ultimate process. And say good luck to all the members standing again, all those members that don't stand again. So good luck, for that in the time. And probably still answering questions. So, yeah, thank you. We've submitted the audit plan. And I suppose it's been read. The main issues I think has been touched on this morning that we're looking at for the audit, first of all being the valuation of assets, which is a big movement, and we are really keen to get stuck into that. We're still waiting on management providers with the valuations so that we can see those numbers and see what we're working with and get stuck into our meetings with the value is. And the one question we do ask management is when there's been a very big movement, as I say, is what was the impact on the previous year? Are you happy that your previous year numbers are okay, not mistaken? What was the reason for the changes in the valuation? And it's a lot of the assumptions got to do with the cost and the unit rates that have gone up considerably in the last year. So we'll spend a fair chunk of that. I sent Donna, and I have to apologise, a very late addendum on my audit plan. Two things changed, I'll take you through it. I added an additional risk. The additional risk that will focus area that we're looking at is with the change in the water landscape, with the Three Waters reform, the entity that provided assurance to council for their compliance with the drinking water standards no longer provides that service. So the question now to each council, how do you ensure compliance with their drinking water standards? So some of the councils have employed an embedded entity like White Apply to provide them with that assurance. Currently, I think TCDs, we're also gathering information from all of the councils over New Zealand to see what different entities are doing so that we can develop an appropriate response. So the Auditor General's default stance in that area is if there's not assurance provided over the compliance with drinking water standards, we'll probably qualify that performance measure in the Auditor General. So that's why it's quite important, and I felt I had to add it. So with the other areas that we've got in there is what we used to. So we also look at the pre-value assessment and impairment risk, which is far less, because I think we almost value everything this year. And the chances of it, the value being materially different come year end is a lot smaller. We've got the sugar loaf warfare, because obviously they as they go through the consent process and hopefully constructing soon. Capital projects, so we'll look at that and see how council has backed along with its capital project against its ambitious LTP plan. And then the last change that we've got in the audit plan there is that I've set out is our dates that we're going to commence the audit. So we've changed the dates to start on the 7th of November, and then working hard to get work hard to get the sign-off date of 13 December, when I think the next council's first meeting is. Everybody's happy with that. I'll take some questions. So, Kerry?
Yeah, questions. Didn't raise the Paku, so I'll raise it here, the Riki Tahi Sugar Loaf Wharf project. Now, we know what happened at Kopu, the rise in the cost of the business from $8 million to $13 million. What's the, I see that as concern about the project accelerating in cost. Is that what you've focused on here is an issue?
I think we were more concerned with the oversight and the accounting part of it itself.
Right.
In terms of the council's oversight going forward is, getting those reports and getting those warnings and flags up early enough so that you know how to react to that as a shareholder.
Right. Yeah, a bit of watch that carefully.
I wouldn't be expecting Carol to answer directly your question. I've taken it to be around not taking this, the controls and nature of how we are. Yeah. Any other questions for Carl in terms of this? Right, so look, Carl, thank you for it, because I was going to raise the question about compliance with the mandatory measures for water quality. I think we will return to that when we get to the next item, which is the annual report. But I just want to be clear. Essentially, as you say, we don't have the drinking water assessors anymore, which has been probably your primary source of reliance on getting assurance that what we say is accurate. You said the default position is that you would be looking for, am I correct, external assurance that we get over those measures at this point?
Yes.
As in contrast to us demonstrating that we've maintained our systems and whatever.
So I think that's what we're working through to see for the, if we can group councils together and what they are doing.
Yeah.
So if you just, like, I think they've got a manual at this stage, is sending off the results to be tested by independent laboratories. Is there some kind of way that you can get to an assurance from just that? If you can demonstrate to it, what do we have to do in reaction to that? If not, then what's the alternatives to do that?
But I don't want to overly take up time with what you're saying is an issue, but Bruce, is this something that's new to you or something you're advising or you, but can I say under control?
So through the chair, let's just say totally under control, but no, to give you more confidence around that, the issue that Carl's talking about has been an issue for all of the councils across New Zealand, so there's the Women's database, the water online system, which was retired last year. And so now where things are come up ROI is that you basically have to have all the information and data available should they request it at any time. And so councils are working through different ways of holding and maintaining that data information. As Carl mentioned, we do have all our water is tested by Water Care Laboratories in Auckland by our contract with Veolia. We are using a system that's called Water Output. And so that's a work in progress to make sure we can hold all the information there, which actually will make it a lot easier for New Zealand to want to have a look at it that's in there. So we have all the data, but we're getting it to a format which is easier to report on for New Zealand.
So, I mean, the audit's coming up. We've got a sense of comfort that our systems withstand Carl's scrutiny at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. Short of potentially your argument that we need to have somebody independently saying that the system is okay.
That's the way of least resistance from the audit perspective, but it doesn't mean that's what the council is.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you, Bruce. I'm glad that you've got that on your watch to say this is an issue. Dare I say we're late running. That's not a criticism, but a late running issue for the sector as a whole, all 63 or 67 water supplies. Okay, so the other thing which we might say is on watch is given the delay in the start of the audit, and I know the pressures that you guys are under. You're pretty happy until 13th of December.
I'll use the term pretty happy loosely. So just, you know what I'm asking here, Carl? I don't, but maybe just back it up a bit too. So we've put up our audit dashboard tool in the management to load the information. We have set up now meetings with Hayden. We're going to set up meetings going forward to clear if there's questions or clarity required for information. But I mean that discipline has to be there from council to make sure they follow their processes in terms of putting the financials together and supporting information as they're loading it on the dashboard in a timeliest way. And the same for the performance measures, making sure that the processes has been followed for quality assurance, and that the supporting data then gets loaded onto the system so that when we get here, everything is there. And then saying that the audit is obviously resource dependent, so if nothing else falls over until then, and all the resources are right like they should, then we should be on track for.
When do you have the resources for the 7th of November confirmed?
It's a work in progress, so we've got...
you must get a point though when you know you've got it.
Yeah, so we've got a few resources coming in from Australian audit officers and other audit officers, as well as overseas recruitment. So that's all moving piece. So, but we'll confirm or let you know if there's anything that.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask you what date will you be able to prepare? I mean, the business is going to be able to work a lot like that. Okay. Well, look, I'll be honest with you. I have already been told elsewhere that some of my responsibilities are going into the new year. And I expect pretty strong protection out of the office if all of a sudden we find ourselves looking at a New Year sign-off. Everybody's faced particularly with a difficult annual plan. That's why I've raised it before, Carl. And the people that are working with the annual report need to be free to work on the annual plan. So that's why I'm asking when you get confirming resources, because it's important we have as early a warning as possible. Then I also expect a fair bit of support from the office that it's going to go past the 30th of December. So there's a strong message, but I'm making it clear. I appreciate that we've got a good relationship with you, which I'm grateful for. But in the long run, delivery becomes really important, and that's what I'm trying to say. So thanks so much. Is there any other questions we've got for Carl and the audit plan? Donna, is anything, sorry, good move, Carl. Donna, is anything you'd like to add at this point? Sorry, I should have brought you in before.
That's okay. No, not in particular. Yeah, it's Carl made me aware of the change in dates a few days ago. So, and yeah, I mean, my biggest concern obviously is I don't want to, if we can avoid it, we don't want to breach any statutory deadlines by having to, not being able to sign by the 31st of December. But I'm saying that I also understand the situation you're in, Carl. I guess probably the only other concern I have is like with I know you're bringing people in, which is great, is what level of skill or training that they will have, and what additional work our staff are going to have to do to bring them up to speed. I guess that could be, something that could be a bit of a problem too. But we'll work through that.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Don. Okay, can we look to the motion, please, which is that we receive Carl's audit plan. I'll move that from the chair. Thank you, Murray. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you. Right, the draft annual report. It's a lot of murmurs around the room. This is exciting. This is what we all look for, isn't it? The numbers. So look, this is it's slightly odd. This actually takes on a wee bit more seriousness considering this today. I mean, we just heard from Carl about when we might actually get an audit opinion, and in some sense, we're actually asking the new council to deal with our public accountability. Because this annual report is actually, in this room, this chamber, is ours, not the new council's. And yet they're going to be asked to sign a statement of compliance that's in the annual report, when the letter of representation that Carl naturally requires of us, which is just a standard requirement. It's going to be a new council that is going to be asked to sign that, because they can only come on the date that the opinion's given, which is going to be the 13th of December. So there's a sense to which we're giving the new council a hospital pass before they even start thinking about their plan. They're going to have to sign off our accountability for past year. So I would like us to treat this with a wee bit of time, a wee bit of seriousness, so that in reference to our minutes, the new council can have some assurance that we have taken the draft annual report as far as we can prior to existence. So that's what we've got to do today. So I'd be keen for us to field the helpful comments for Hayden, who I haven't speak yet, sorry Hayden, or Donna, just to get that in place. So I put that context as making this a reasonably important item for me, not because us accountants love numbers, but actually because it's about our accountability and actually we're asking somebody else to clear it. Hayden?
Oh, sorry, just before Hayden, could I jump in and say something? I'd just like to stress that this is a very first draft. We're still in the process of completing some sections and reviewing, so there will be updates obviously before it's being presented to audit. Also, that you'll notice that there are some notes like the PP&E, the property, plant and equipment note, and any other related notes doesn't have any information in it at the moment. Unfortunately, the staff member responsible for that got ill with COVID, and so we're a bit behind with that. But Hayden, I was talking to Hayden this morning, and he assured me that that would be completed by the end of this week. So we'll definitely have a full draft when it comes time for audit. But I guess probably what we're really wanting from you today is, because this is such an initial draft and audit haven't looked at it yet, is any feedback that you've got that we can consider or take into consideration in building this annual report.
Thank you, Don. That's really helpful and good context also about where we're at in the process. Hayden, would you like to, is there anything you'd like to say before we get into this?
Yeah, through the chair. With the revals, we were also doing 2 revals in 1 year, so and doing unit rate reviews, and we obviously had COVID on both sides. We had it on the external consultant side, we had it on our side, so there were delays, plus the increased workload, which has led to it not making this draft, which is unfortunate. But yeah, staff did what they could, and this is basically what we got to.
Thank you. Could I ask just then a question, because Carl's raised it actually, obviously, as a critical point for him as leading the audit team. What I'm hearing you and Donna say is that tomorrow, which is the end of the week, we should have those revaluations all confirmed, loaded, and then into the draft accounts essentially by tomorrow. That's great, good. Are you able to give an indication of what is the increase in revaluation at this stage? You got a rough ballpark figure for us? No,
not really, other than wastewater has been the one that's gone up the most. That's been quite significant.
The order of what?
50 odd %. So,
50 odd %?
Yeah. Okay. And the other ones have actually, they've gone up in line with CAF, so they've done a unit rate review against other councils, and the other unit rates have actually sort of been in line, so there hasn't been a need to, but wastewater has been the one, and roading to a lesser degree as well. So
so roading, that's right, roading is the other one that I would have thought was probably taken further. That's the right word. Okay. So we could expect quite a significant revaluation adjustment. That then leads me to the other question then. Carl's raised the issue about when we should recognise the increase. Should it be all this year or indeed allocated to prior years? Did you folk get a chance to turn your minds to that?
Yeah, I think Donna, I don't think we've been in prior period era that occur, but obviously different moving forward. It's going to have an impact on depreciation. Like depreciation will go up significantly in those asset classes that are moved. So that's something to think about when we come to do the 23-24 annual plan, the long-term plan. It's really going to. It's a big step change, you know.
Yeah. Through the chair, I'm relatively comfortable that it won't affect the prior period because when we look at the adjustments and what's happened in the last 12 months, that's what's really impacted on these values. It's not. I don't believe that it. We have had a look back, but we don't believe that it's going to that it affects the prior period. That's still going to be, materially in the right position. The big changes, the big cost adjustment and changes that we've seen has really been a result of a lot of things happening in the last 12 months.
Thank you. I would in principle be in the same position that it was about September last year, which is the current financial year. We suddenly felt the real hit on and the strong indicator of need for evaluation. So in principle, unless I can be proved otherwise, I think it's this year. Terry.
Just to comment on that, because with the 3 waters, the government will be watching to see if people are loading their systems. So it's good to have that commentary about these things happen in the last 12 months. So that sort of helps me a lot understanding what you're doing with that revaluation.
Through the chair, we have a report, right, which benchmarks us against, for each asset class against the other councils to give, I guess, comfort that we're in the right ballpark.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so what's the best way? I'm happy to lead us through the report. What do you want to do?
I'll take the pause read and take any questions.
Okay, well, I wonder if I could just sort of try and garner a wee bit of direction here. Bear in mind, Donna and Hayden are looking for our input as they move to finalise it. And I figured that it might be helpful if I gave you my direction and lead through it. Because it tends to be what I have to do around the place. And so I would like to first of all move us to the highlight section. Actually, I don't think I heard you say, Murray, as we were starting the meeting, that actually it shows a lot of good achievements. What I want to ask the question of you as a council in your preparation for this item do those highlights look like the year that you've had as a council? In here, I say it within your communities as well, firstly as a district, in the course of the last financial year, the 30 June. Is this a good reflection of the achievements that we have done? Is anything that's missing, probably? No?
Is it? I don't know what other people think, but with the Thames community spaces and development, kind of think when we're at the point of saying, oh, a fence was replaced with a cemetery, I kind of wonder if that's getting down into a little bit too smaller detail. I don't know. Compared with the other, and even the solar-powered CCTV cameras, I guess it's trying to give some assurance to people that were doing things, and that may be significant around security at that venue. But yeah, I just wonder at what sort of level of either money value or what people are interested in, whether we're at that right sort of balance.
Well, if I could just note here, firstly, we should be providing you with comments for Hayden and Donna to take on board as they try and finalise the accounts. I want to just reflect one thing, Martin. This is your accountability. Are you happy? So I'm wanting you folk as a committee to exercise your judgment as to whether this is what you want to have as your legacy for the last year. So I've got, don't worry, I'll see you soon, we've got Sandra and then.
Under the seat, Secretary. So my question, I've got a question, but my question would be to John. In looking at the Coromandel Cobble Community Board, I mean, do you actually think that what's been listed in there is what you would see as the highlights? Do you see that other projects that we've been involved in is also a highlight, like Te Riki Tahi, which is the Shibboleth? Progress that's been made in regard to Haureki House, just the different things, what you've done, achieved in Pound Street. I mean, I actually think there's potentially more or different things that might be highlighted in various boards in this highlights section. And as Bruce said, this is the opportunity to put your two boxes worth in and make sure it's substantial.
It's skimming around the edge a bit, though, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily, because it's, do you think you'll be able to speak for the Coromandel Cobble Board and?
No, I looked at the discussions in ours and I thought, well, really, that's not the guts of it. Sorry, that's where I came from.
No.
So that's what I want to say too.
So yes, Terry, you're quite right, you had your hand up and you were next,
So the commentary around the Whangatau Communal Space and Development, the 3 toilets there are TIF funded. For $30 million to get TIF funding for 3 toilets, we would say, where's the money gone, guys? So we've spent $500,000 up doing up our swimming pool and some other great works around town, so we really need that commentary in there, otherwise it doesn't look much.
So this is the first go round.
Yeah.
And so I suggest that each and every one of us actually
You write a list
with your other associate in your ward, not except for John, and
I'm always by myself.
and work out what it is you do want in there, because this is really all the work that each and every one
But they'll
of us
read,
does.
this is the people that
Sandra, are you suggesting that we get together with our colleagues from our ward and provide that feedback separate to this forum to Hayden?
I don't care how you do it.
I think Robin,
I just think it's a shame nobody responded back already.
could I have a wee bit of,
I think that,
can I just have a wee bit of order? I'm very keen to have a pretty open discussion, but let's just clarify Robin's point. I think Sandra is saying, and I think it's possible under the timing we've got, which this is first draft, it's first cut. So I take it, Hayden, you're still open to helpful suggestions, which clearly you're going to have to run away with it's patronizing. You're going to have to work on. So I think, Robin, there is time for you to get together with your colleagues and just agree, this is first cut, would you want to have that changed? Sally?
no, that's fine.
Tony, your turn.
I was just going to raise some Mercury Bay, for instance, and at Maple City has happened, like Whakapā has also opened up another playground, and it's of a very high standard. It's in keeping with everything else we've done. And the other question I got with the Lime Park tennis courts, the tennis club. paid for that, not us, because the public courts are either out at Mauiwai or up at Tarapataki. So I'm not sure that council's paid to put the tiger turf at the tennis club. And I'm talking about community development, so I could talk about an unmitigated disaster as well, but we should leave that one out.
I think the reason I wanted to focus on this, and I'm sorry, Hayden's got a wee bit all over the place, but I think Sandra suggested a way forward here, is that when we tend to review things, we tend to get to a negative vibe. I'm talking generally around the country. And actually the critical thing is that we look at the level of service we have actually provided, and we try and get the best characterisation of that. And I'm assuming it's because we've achieved a fair bit and it needs to be in here. So can I leave it that actually there is a wee bit of homework for you as councillors to do, Sally?
My original question was, it's the heading, Thames Community Spaces and Development, that I didn't have a sense that gave me an opportunity to have a narrative about potentially some of the things we've done to increase the vibrancy and connectiveness of Thames, and it felt like it was just a list of what had happened. Yeah. So do we have a place to put a couple of sentences about a story rather than a list of facts?
That's exactly what I was just writing down here, is that I think we should take away, this is a list of achievements, and from a staff perspective, we go, oh yeah, it's great. Yeah. But they kind of need to build in the context for each of the things, why it's important, why it's exciting. Add in some, just do a rewrite and add a little bit more feeling into it.
Yes, it's the story that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's two things to, oh, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, just sort of following on what Aileen said, like for instance, the Keith Park Memorial Airfield, water tanks and pumps were installed in preparation for an irrigation system. But people look at that and go, oh, I'm irrigating, why are they irrigating the airfield? And it's so that we make sure that we got grass growth so that it can be a 12-month of the year operation. So it's that context around why did you do that.
So I want to reflect one thing as you do your homework on this one. It is highlights. We can't get everything in here. Yeah. Otherwise, it's the whole annual report. Okay. But it is the critical things around the highlights for the year.
This is the key thing, Bruce, that people read.
I agree.
What have we done?
Exactly.
That's the paragraph that means everything.
Yeah, exactly.
If you get that right, it helps a hell of a long way.
And that's why A, I focused on this, but B, I'm grateful that you've engaged in this. So Hayden's looking at all of us. Okay, he's had a crack, well done, but he actually needs our help on this now. So if you could do it as Sandra suggested, that would be great.
Hayden, may I be so bold as to give us a time limit on this, so tell us when you need it?
Next week or
tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
ASAP, have I heard you say?
Yeah, okay. Look, I think that's a good question, Robin, and I said there's a wee bit of time to be able to do this, but we shouldn't dally around either. Yeah. Donna, I think you had a point to make, or your hand's up, sorry. I was just
Yeah, I did, but it's probably Aileen basically said what I was going to say, and also, yeah, we do have to remember that it's highlights, but I think you're right. It could be written in a way that's not so list oriented, and I'm not sure whether Meg, I see Leslie is online, but I'm not sure whether Meg is there in the room, but because Meg and Leslie's team is responsible for this part of the document, so I'm hoping that they're there to hear some of this feedback.
Through the chair, hi, this is Leslie Vargas. Yes, I'm listening, and I have made note of that feedback. Thank you. We'll work with comms on this to get it right.
So it's not a case of it being wrong, but it's actually a case of how do we enhance it in a way that we feel comfortable with our accountability. John?
Just a comment. This has happened before. I remember one year it was a seat was built at the Colville Cemetery, which I thought we could have done, sold ourselves a lot better on. I've actually already written down the items I can see as have happened in my ward. We'll get to you in a minute, Hayden. And they are highlights. These are real achievements for the community. So it's not a big deal.
And some of the big things are included in the economic development as opposed to as a ward. Whereas I think there's code and marine development and spatial plan, pretty significant potential.
So yes, so the commentary can be not just about the community that you're based in, but actually it is you're accountable for the whole. So there may be other things, as you say, Sandra, if you want to suggest to Hayden the team. Who do the comments go to? You, Hayden, or
I'll
to?
take them and I'll get them.
Okay, give them Hayden.
Done.
Okay, if we can keep moving on, please, that'll be really good. My new attention then went to, and I was just reading through it, was actually the next section around the financial prudence. And I'll come back to this point a wee bit later on. But I just thought it was worthwhile us looking at the coloured bar graphs that start on page 71. Sorry, of the agenda. Sorry, it's page 10 of the actual annual report. The reason I look at this again, to really your point, these are the early pages of the accounts, and actually they will be what anybody's looking at them, they're going to have a squiz at. So these are mandatory. We don't have a choice as to what we show, or indeed we don't have any choice about the colour of the graphs, can I be honest, so we can't make them Thames Coromandel colours. These are seriously mandating colours. The orange has got to be a certain colour.
Yeah.
I think the critical point I want to make here is though the explanations on these are reasonable. Sorry, are ours to comment on. So I just wonder whether there was any points that people had in their reading about this. Sorry, Robert.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that from the point of view of somebody who knows lots of colourblind people, the orange and the green are horrible. But if it's not ours, then it's
mandated by the sound of it.
It's not something that we have
not debatable.
Any ability to deal with. This has come down from on high, and so we've got to go with the colour.
Yeah.
So the critical thing, there's two things that stand out for me here. One is clearly the graph on page 72 reflects the rates pressure we've been under for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In other words, the black is essentially what we anticipated in our long-term plan, correct? And we've had to go above what we really wanted to do in terms of the long-term plan. For the reasons that I'm going to, but you know, that I think are well traversed. Equally, I want to reflect that on if you go to the page 74 in particular, you'll see that it's done two things. One, we've balanced our budget, where in years past we haven't. So we've asked the ratepayer to cough up. They have, but we've been able to bring it in a balanced budget in a way that makes a lot of sense. And number two, we've been able to maintain our investment in our essential services. Correct?
Yep.
Does that feel like the year you've had?
It does. It's been a bit far better last year.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think the reasons that are there will stand up. Hayden, I look okay to me. I don't have anything else to comment, but I just wanted to perhaps draw members' attentions to that. Then we get into the section on the non-financials. By the way, this is why I think that highlight section is so important, because this is where I think, Murray, you said, or was it Tony, there's a few things we haven't achieved, and this is where we get into it, because actually we have to faithfully and transparently report against our plan levels of service, and some of those are not achieved. So I'm open to Hayden, if I could say that, Hayden, I'm open to any comments or thoughts that you have in terms of what we disclose, quite frankly, through a fair number of these pages in terms of the levels of service and our achievement or not. Any comments on that, guys?
I just note that the libraries have struggled, a couple of them. We're talking about service level agreements.
Yeah.
And obviously the wastewater and that, there's some tie-ups that we've had, but we're working on those. So I think Bruce has always been very explanatory on those ones, so I've got no issues over those. So.
I think it's a good point.
Well, no, I had a thing about the library as well, because I know that we changed these sometime during our term, and I can't remember the circumstances under which we changed these reporting criteria, but you know, everybody knows I use the library a lot, and I see the library as being very busy and offering a really large range of services that aren't just people getting out books. So they're offering there's a justice of the peace, the queue is out the door, literally. There's a knitting club, you can't get a seat if you're in there after 10 o'clock if you're thinking of going, get there early. The computers are all busy. Yes, this paints a picture of the library not being a particularly active place, but the reality is not that.
Yep.
So when do we get a chance to review these assessments?
Well, in two ways. One, quite frankly, it won't happen. I'll probably going to be developed in the annual plan that's coming up.
Yes.
Because the critical thing is we are reporting against the standards that we set ourselves when we can primarily it's actually the long term.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But there's two things. One, there's nothing to suggest probably you might have to think about whether you want to go to consultation or not. There's nothing to stop you doing it with the annual plan.
Right.
The second point I wanted to make was there's nothing to say that we can't add to what is described here.
Yep.
I think we have to reflect. We're going to put down, 10 libraries being sort busy with knitting clubs and bits and pieces. I don't think that's a problem. I mean, I'd say let's go for it. As long as we can, and I'm looking across here at Carl, as long as we've got the systems behind it to verify what's occurring, it is valuable additional information we could have.
And I recognise that additional information might currently not being collected, and so I don't want to impose anything for you to freak out about at this stage. I just think that going forward, if we're looking, and maybe this is a conversation to have with the new manager of the library to say, well, actually, what do library services look like from a library institute point of view? What do they look like from a Thames Coromandel district point of view? And how can we, in the future, better reflect that as a measure in our non-performance indexes?
Thank you. I think that's a very, very good point.
Thanks.
So I think what we're probably agreeing at this stage is it could be if you were making presumably inquiry librarians, there is some additional information that we could, if they measure it, I say that, if they measure it, we could include Hayden, which would be helpful to reflect the broader nature of a modern library, which we will have. But you've got your point, you've made your point also wrong, but actually when we do this next, we need to be closer to what makes a more effective library service. Terry.
Just this one on page 93 about the deaths on the road.
Yep.
It's not achievable, doesn't seem to be the right word. It's not something that we can actually improve, I suppose, unless it's a difficult. Not achieved means we didn't do it. Not applicable might be the right word, but I don't know. I just feel that's just a negative, really.
I think it's, I'm glad you did it because in terms of my notes, that was the first one I looked at, to be honest here. If you look at my notes, Bruce, I just wonder if there's anything here that you'd like to comment on this one. It actually is one that we probably have made noises on most years, in the sense of, geez, this is a challenging measure for us to take. I encourage us to have it on the basis of we should take ownership for what is the quality of our roads, and how does it affect safety. Have we represented this fairly though, Bruce? Would be the question I'd ask you.
Is that a council road or outside?
Council roads.
Council road.
So through the chair, the first point I'd want to raise is that the terminology, as I take Councillor Walker's point, terminology is the standard terminology that we use that comes through from the mandatory measures about achieving or not achieved. So that would be the first thing I'd state. None of these crashes were specifically related to roading and safety issue. I have followed up on that, and I know this is always a measure of interest for all of us. Unfortunately, we did have a tragic situation where 2 people lost their lives on the roads. One you might remember was a girl up in Coromandel. We believe it was a sunstroke issue. We have actually made some changes on that road to make some changes on the outside corner of that road to avoid that happening again. We'll try and mitigate that. And then the other one was around alcohol and lack of seatbelts. So unfortunately, very tragic, but both those instances as a result of the safety issues with the road.
That's great. Thank you for that, Bruce. I looked at this to think, and probably, we can't take volumes and pages to describe things. I was just wondering whether we did do ourselves enough service here to say, that we have, that we have actively followed up. That was the only thing. So if there was a better way, if there was a more positive way to say, this is like what happens, we then follow up. But maybe there's a more positive way to put that, in the sense of probably picking up something.
Concern that we can.
The incidents have been reviewed. We have made our.
Yeah. Well, the point of fact is that it was achieved because this was not a road maintenance condition issue. So therefore, that threshold has been met. The fact that we had 2 deaths, and it's clear this wasn't a road maintenance issue, really does but beg the question about the non-achieved determination. If there was an added line which says that this was not due to, this unfortunate incidents were not due to road condition error, therefore our targets have been met.
But our target sees the change from the number of deaths on the local expressed as a number, so you'd have to change your target before you can change your measure.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying the wording.
Just needs
the wording needs to be looked at in a way that puts us in the best. Yeah. Better say the best possible environment.
We'll review that.
We need to be faithful to actually what we've achieved. So that's what we're going to do.
Would you not note, though, that these are, I'd almost say all of them, are driver error. So it's a bit like the NZTA thing, road to zero. You'll never get to zero because you don't know the wheel's going to fall off your car on the way back to the airport, or you're going to have a heart attack. So the basis that our pavement is okay, if someone's drunk or they haven't got a seatbelt on, well, the sun's in their eyes, that's unlucky, but that isn't our problem. So for me, I look at these things too, because I don't think that the road to zero to me is, it's a nice catchphrase, but it is unachievable, so I have it. And people just laugh at it. And so for us, I agree with Sandra's court. I think we have achieved on the basis that our roads and the stuff we're responsible for has been done. They haven't been the contributing factor to the accident or death. So that's where I'd be, rather than try and make this fit into what Kotahi or, in my terms, NZTA want to do.
That's why I'm looking at the wording, Tony.
I agree totally.
Because I agree that, I hear your point, but I think the point is we've been asked to report against a given measure and standard, not one of the libraries which we determine ourselves. So I think Hayden, we're asking, can you and Bruce relook at essentially, even though we have to go with the numbers and the not achieved, we're essentially saying, but we are proactive and good managers of our roads, and there's no, so whatever's the right word, there's no indication that our condition was caused. Okay, so sorry, thank you for that. Terry, was there anything else you want to raise? No. Yes, Robin.
2 more things. On page 95, I see the council facilities waste minimisation practices promote. We've achieved that, which is great, and I think it's time to shout out to our solid waste manager because she's been very proactive. So can you pass that on, Bruce?
Yes, I'll pass it.
Thank you. And then on page 144, so out of the non-financial performance index says.
Could you just hold that for a moment? Yes, I haven't got out of the non-financial.
Oh, no, I'll hold.
Okay.
All good.
Hayden, just let me go to 101. We're getting close to 145. I'll wait right in. But if we look at 101, which is water, which is clearly the problem child for us, but we've got some strong explanations about the water program, whatever it is, it's in go there. Can I just check, oh no, wastewater, sorry, that's not helpful. Can I just check, at the top of these, particularly relating to part 4 and part 5, can I just check that we actually have in the italics the correct words? Because that talks about drinking water assessors, and we don't have drinking water assessors anymore. I think this possibly has come through from an old report. We need to have this updated. Yes, part of the year was under drinking water assessors, but I don't know really what they said then. Yes, this is essentially what Carl's saying. Tomato ROI now really dominate. In fact, for the most of the year, dominate. So I think there is some wording that we need to recognise changes there. So,
Says independent.
you know, I realise that, but we don't, drinking water assessors is referring to the old Ministry of Health process, which is true for the period up till, what, 14 November or 15 November last year. But we are under currently, and has dominated the year, the tomato Arawai process. So I think
But doesn't it require council to have an independent water assessor?
No. I mean, this is the point that Carl was saying, is actually, in terms of external verification, we've had the drinking water assessor, the Ministry of Health, saying the results are the results. Under Tomato Arawai, the responsibility on affirming those results lies with the water supplier, which is us, not with an external body called the drinking water assessor.
Different.
No, but don't we have to get an external?
Well, that's a question mark. That's a question mark.
I think they're still calling it. Oh, right.
But I don't know, I'm just conscious that we talked there about drinking water assessed with capital B, W and A, perhaps it's a case of lowering that, but it's not the system that we're ultimately finalising our report. And that's also true for part 5. Okay, there are some interesting issues there to go through, but I think for the sake of the morning and my time out, there are more ones that would be good to chat through in terms of what does it mean for us in terms of levels of service going forward. I'm interested now where we're at. Martin?
Can I just very briefly, right, on page 94, and I'm not trying to show off that I've read every word of this, but it says potholes and the sealed roads. I'm assuming that should be potholes in the sealed roads.
Yep, that probably is a chocolate fish to you, Martin. Thank you. Let's take your page 100, so this feels like it's moving on. Can we go to 140, whatever?
144, talking about forestry. So this is great. Love the fact that it talks about the forestry that we own. I was thinking about this in the context of the greenhouse gas emissions reporting inventory that we had to the Sustainability and Resilience Group. And there's inconsistencies about where your annual plan document says we own forestry and where the greenhouse gas inventory says we own forestry. So potentially you need to talk to John Muston, who provided the information for the inventory, because according to that we own forestry on Moai Road, Matatoki Quarry Road, Purui Valley and Whanakaho, whereas this says just front road Kairua. So just, it would be, I don't know which one is correct. I don't know.
How much forestry in those areas?
I don't know.
So
not much.
Not much.
Maybe gum trees. Be a reserve or something like that, I'd say.
Yeah, so Moai Road, small exotic forestry planted by gum according to the inventory, and so just I noticed that consistency.
Can I just add to your point? Do we have any emission trading units associated with our forestry? We've got none. That's interesting. Okay, that's fine, because I was just wondering whether we should be accounting for ETUs, but we haven't got them, so we haven't got them. That exposes us. We want to know them. Yes, Don? Donna, you're on mute.
Yeah, saw that. Just to answer Councillor Sinclair's question, the difference, I believe, is that with the annual report, we're talking about forestry assets. So that's assets, forestry that we actually have on our books. What John is talking about is probably the forestry that it's not an asset, it's just what we have on our reserves. It's two different things. I think that's why you'll find they won't be the same thing.
Okay, so we don't own the trees in the annual report, is that what you're saying? Or we do own the trees?
So the note in the annual report is about the actual forestry, like a proper commercial type forestry that we own that is managed through the Resource Management Act and through a forestry process, whereas the other bits that John is talking about aren't a forestry as such.
Right, okay, yeah.
Classified as a different asset.
Yeah.
Like drainage reserve and stormwater reserve and airport,
Drainage reserve.
you can stand there and count the trees, that's how many there are.
Right, so the error is in the emissions report, that's good, not your report. You can rely.
Don't worry, it's why we have this time to clarify, Murray.
Just going back to the question you just asked, the summary in here says the trees are from 1 to 40 years old. So the ones that recently planted, we should have had carbon credits, we can offset the harvesting, shouldn't we?
Well, that's what I asked.
Yeah,
I'm
thinking about what you
surprised there's no disclosure around the ETUs.
Yeah.
Because I presume we would have had some.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption, so I wonder if we haven't applied for them.
Can you just have a look into that, please,
I
Hayden?
can look into
Yeah. I mean, councils don't necessarily have large holdings of forestry and such, but when they do and they've got ETUs, quite frankly, it's $76 a unit or something to make quite a big number. But some of them takes time up to. So could you just clarify that for completeness of our accountability?
You understand the forestry is an irrigation forest.
Yeah.
Can I just push on, because I'm conscious of my time and I want to try and get to a public forum at roughly the right time, John, but we might just go back a tad. Can I just, the notes are, I do want to come back to the primary financial statements, but the notes are really important to us. Can I just point us to page 115, which is actually part of our accounting policies, but just noting 115, it lists those things which are critical to the way in which we measure our transactions and the likes. So we estimate the fair value, the value of our buildings and what have you. So they don't just do estimates. We've talked at length about that, but there are a number of other costs which we incur, which are estimates in nature, and we're sitting in here are reasonable. I just want to reflect on that. And then there are some critical judgments. I want to just come back to some of those. Page 143, in note 17, Hayden, we have, I better just find this. I just wanted to ask the question about SaaS arrangements, so software as a service. That was an issue which, I don't know if we actually declared that as an issue here, Carl, but can you give me some comfort that we have reviewed the accounting standard and requirement, well, we're not accounting, it's guidance around.
We've reviewed the guidance, but for the chair, we've reviewed the guidance, but we're still performing the assessment.
Right, so
I don't believe we have a material.
Yeah, so it's not material.
No.
Okay, right. This is for the benefit of councillors, broadly speaking, software and issues that that we have treated as assets may not be able to be treated as assets. They may well become matters of equivalent of a lease, in which case we'd be having to expense substantial stuff. So it's just a small thing.
Yep.
Forestry, we talked about on page 144, and it's checked that we don't have any ETUs. That's really helpful.
Yep.
Could I just look, go to page 152? It's a really important one because while we're measuring our revenue and expenditure for 21-22 year, there's always things that hang over. And one of them is indeed contingencies. And we've got a few listed there. Hayden, I guess I'm just wanting to check that we've done a full sweep for what we think. They look like the contingencies that are probably logical for our operation over the course of the last year. You've done, I guess I'm looking for some level of assurance you think it's complete.
Yeah, through the chair, we've done an assessment with the legal team, and that is our assessment of where we stand in terms of those liabilities.
Brilliant. I just draw members' attentions to it because actually there's some very interesting points there.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay. Can I then just go to page 160, which is events after balance date. So we have to disclose matters which occur post 30 June, but which might give a view on the state and condition either our balance sheet or the position that we've got to by 30 June. We say at the moment there's no matters or events after balance date.
Through the chair at the moment, yeah.
At the moment, yes. Yeah. So we'll have to hold that open.
Yeah.
One would assume, for instance, that the water services bill becomes an act. Yeah. We would probably want to disclose here if not elsewhere in the accounts, the impact of the impact of the water services, but at least noting that it's going to affect us. Okay, good. If you just invite to just stand by for a bit, we'll be back on, please. Okay, look, they were the key things. So the only other thing then was I just wanted to reflect quickly on financial prudence. We looked at the numbers in terms of, the graphs at the start of the report. Obviously, the critical thing is the actual financial statements themselves. Have people looked at these financial statements? Have you got any questions in relationship to them?
I was just interested in one about the remuneration for the staff for the KiwiSaver type of program, was up to 5 times requesting 5-to-1 package. Did we have a discussion about something that staff decide?
Sorry, can you refer us to which page? You're talking about the
5-to-1.
Pardon?
It's a 5-to-1.
Can you tell us what page you're on there, please?
Yeah.
161.
I read it last night. It was about their their package for the super scheme. I'm trying to find it now. I read it last night. And it was 5-to-1 that they were recommending.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
Need to find it for us so that we can.
Yeah. So it was just a highlight of them.
So I can try to answer, and I might defer to Donna's superior knowledge of this area, but as I understand it, there's a legal minimum where the employer has to match, but then there's an optional where the staff can actually put in more. I think it's up to 5% or some different number where they can put in additional without the employer contribution alongside it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. That is correct. It's so that it's the 3% is what the organisation has to put in. Staff can elect to put anywhere from, I think there's different things. There's like 3%, 5%, 8%, or 10% of their own contribution.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, is that fine, Jerry?
I can't find it. So
the critical thing is that we.
It started at 3-to-1 at the start there, but they've moved it to 5-to-1. So I just highlighted it.
Well, you guys can come back and let Hayden know.
Through the chair, I'm not. I know. I think it's in note 4. But Terry, what you're referring to is the old scheme that we used to be in, called Defined Benefit Plan scheme. Yeah. And we only have 1 employee left in that scheme, but we still have to have all this note disclosure in there around that. It's very, very immaterial to us.
Yeah, so I was looking at the numbers.
It's not KiwiSaver.
Really low, and I wondered why.
Okay. Can I focus in on the financial? My final comment, which is not about what's disclosed. I've gone and looked at the statement of revenue and whatever we call it, sorry, P&L, balance sheet and cash flow statement. I'm comfortable with where they're at. I just want to draw attention again, thinking about our accountability for our financial strategy. Are we maintaining our asset base? So the test I look at is what's the level of depreciation that we are disclosing? Sorry, if you go back to it, if you just think about it, there is one number here where you have to put in the gain or loss on our assets, aren't we? Yes. So this is where this statement is incomplete. So if you go to the gain, loss, you see under other comprehensive revenue and expenses, so below the operating line, if you will, there's an entry there, gain on property, plant and equipment revaluation. There's going to be a big number. Yeah. We don't know what it, well, you're going to put that in tomorrow and we'll be able to see what it comes up on, but it's actually a substantial increase actually in the numbers, correct? Yes. Right, yeah. It might feel like we're getting wealthier because we're going to declare a big surplus, but you might have other views on that in terms of your wastewater assets.
So how will that affect depreciation?
Through the chair, it'll have obviously a significant effect.
And that'll come back to the question of the annual plan, Chair. And given we're going to lose those assets, we're going to have to start thinking about what are we doing. Bearing in mind, roading has gone up, as Hayden was saying. That's still our asset. That's going to cost us more. So I think the bottom line is we're going to have to think that one through.
In regard to property, I'm just involved with something at the moment, and it's quite clear that the property market and all sorts of commercial property are dropping, and it's looking like 20%, if not more. And we have to rejig it again because we've got the whole thing that people pay rates on figures, and then suddenly the 20% drop on real value. What happens to us?
Through the chair, that could happen next year. There could be a reversal of those. Obviously, we've had the revals done for the 30th of June. If there was a 20% decrease, then that affects the issues in relation to this.
And how would that affect your operation?
Would there be less depreciation?
So it's swings and roundabouts.
That's why it's an important area that we look. I just spoke pretty quickly on the valuation and the depreciation calculation is an estimate. We cannot hold it out as anything more than an estimate. It's got a lot of rigour around it. Clearly, we've got external experts in the form of valuers to define the valuation as it stands at the moment. Dare I say it, Carl and the team also go through it like a dose of salts. So in effect, we have got external validation of that estimate, but it's still only that. It's subject to change. So look, I just wanted to very quickly just clear up. I look at depreciation, so we're sitting at $23.5 million this year, depreciation. I do a very quick check, primarily by going to the statement of cash flows and our net cash flow from operating. So that's looking at what goes through our bank account, by the way, stands at $35.5 million. There probably is, well, there is a relationship. Ultimately, it's not always one for one, but it's good to see that our surplus cash flows from operations approximates depreciation. In fact, it exceeds it, which is actually really good. The next thing I look at is the purchase of property, plant and equipment in that section below, the net cash flow from operating expenditure, where we have spent $29 million cash. I know if we accrue it'll be a different number, but if we're looking at it from a cash perspective, we've spent $29 million, which is above our depreciation number. So that's a sign that we are investing adequately to maintain our capital base, which after all is part of the important process that we're doing. So it does suggest that we're actually doing things well, but it probably reflects when we increase that number, we have to go looking for more revenue. And we have to think about where that would actually come from. Right, yeah, so that's a good sign that we're prudent. Can we just look at one last item, and that is the statement of compliance on page 48. This is the
48 of the. What's the other page?
I'll give it to you.
Oh, okay.
Hang on, I'll give it to you.
I wrote 48. Is it actually the? 109. Sorry, 109.
109.
Where did 48 come from?
Yes, that's 2 pages.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I put the wrong thing. So I don't actually have Sandra's opinion. A name is going to appear on this one because this is my point that actually, while indeed it's Sandra and the team's accountability, it won't be signing. And so I just want us to reflect. We obviously only have draft accounts. And there are some changes, although I think we've got a sense of where the big ones are, which is primarily the revaluation has got to flow through this baby and a little bit of change. The question is, it's slightly speculative, but would we be happy with that statement of compliance being signed? It's going to say that the responsibility for the preparation of statements and judgments in them are ours. Okay, so that's why it's important today that we think about these, because actually we're passing on to the new council what we think are reasonable judgments and considerations in the preparation of it. And that we are taking responsibility that we have maintained systems of control in the course of the 21-22 year. That's
It's probably a little bit very common, but isn't that what we've done in the next six office?
Sometimes sign it.
Agreed, but I'm saying we as a committee have been here for the year, not the new council. And they're going to be asked to sign this But are we comfortable that we have seen enough evidence? Bear in mind, Aileen actually wasn't here during the course of this year. Aileen, might I say, is going to be representing management and signing this. Are we comfortable, when we think about the years what we have done, that we've maintained systems, these accounts have integrity, and we've used best endeavours to prepare this draft annual?
Can I ask, next week we've got the last council meeting. Is there any way you can log in and you hopefully will have your updated report by then, and we may feel more comfortable at that stage?
Well, we can talk about that potentially as a potential, but I think you can.
I'll answer your question and say yes.
Yeah, I mean, council next week should, if anything, have a lead from us as a committee.
Yes.
That actually we would recommend that, because we're the champions of the external reporting. So I asked the question today, Gary, as much as it is next week. Are we comfortable?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm bet we are. I mean, I think sorry, I am, but I don't want to lead the horse to water. I can't make it drink. Are you happy?
Yep.
We've got some risks that as long as we're comfortable with risks.
Yeah. So it's conditional in nature. So subject to the completion. Yeah. Clearly, it's going to be subject to events that either occur essentially from the 8th of October or subject to audit. We're comfortable that we could assert the compliance statement could be signed. Okay, I think that's important that we just note that in our minutes, Brian, if that's okay. Okay, that's cool. Thank you. I think we've got through it at this stage. This is a pretty short timeline to get adjustments in. Essentially, we're saying tomorrow, so probably the thing that's outstanding from us around this room is the highlight section that we've talked about. And Sandra, thank you for your lead on that as to how we should respond. Otherwise, it's going to try and nail this for us tomorrow, along with Gary, your point that this will go to council next week. Can we go to the recommendations then, please, that are on page 16? I'm wondering if you would be prepared to come and see one, Sandra. Yep. One, that we receive the draft annual report. Two, that we provide feedback. Well, we have that council notes, we have provided feedback on the draft annual report for consideration. And my third one is that we recommend council informs the new council that we are comfortable and can be subject to the completion of the accounts, etc., that the compliance statement could be signed.
Well,
as of at this date.
Can we drop the word comfortable? Fully endorse the comment.
Okay, thank you. You're right, we need to make it positive. So that's really the third thing, is really just bring us back to this point. We're doing the best we can for people that were given a hospital pass that which is they've got to sign off. We're saying to the extent that we can give you comfort or endorsement, we would take it. Okay?
Fully endorse.
Okay. So we've got to move. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, John. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. We have Mr. Noonan online, I take it still. Could I indulge you? I'm sorry to be painful that we hear from Mr. Noonan now.
Yep.
Seeing he's come. I want to stress it's a public forum, so I'm going to propose to give them 5 minutes. I would invite you to ask questions, but I want to reflect on the forum as a time for asking questions of fact or clarification, not of expressing opinions. We will come to that when we deal with the item in PX. Okay, if you could admit, please, that would be great. Mr. Noonan, Bruce Robertson here. I'm the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. Can you hear me?
Morena, Bruce, can you hear me?
Thank you. Look, appreciate you being here, Mike, and we had agreed, and thank you for being available. I'm sorry that we've held you up a wee bit, just the course of the meeting and probably my chairmanship. We decided to defer public forum until now to invite you to speak
to the matter. I just want to stress that I'm in public forum. I'm comfortable if you take about 5 minutes in your presentation or the comments that you would like to make to us about your matter. I'm then going to invite councillors to ask any questions of you that are related to facts or clarification, but we are not debating the matter until we get to that in public excluded. So I'd invite you to open up with any comments you care to make, and then I'll ask members if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for the opportunity, and to everybody at council for making this happen. My name is Mike Noonan. I am the Executive Trustee of Coromandel Independent Living Trust, and locally we're called KILT. KILT is a unique organisation, which I know is probably an overused or overworked term, but I believe it's true. We operate in a community in the Coromandel Colville ward, which is one of very high social deprivation within the district. And we have evolved into a broad-based community organisation which has responded over the years to need, which is part of community development, but also responded to the community board's requests. And one of the very earliest requests from the community board was back in 2003, when council was divesting itself of full pensioner housing within the district. The price was worked out by amortising the debt over the properties. And so we were asked to take on 7 pensioner flats from council. Another local group that would have been more appropriate really declined. They said that Coromandel owed no money on the flats when it was taken over from Coromandel County Council. And so they moved aside. The community board came to KILT. So there was a large undertaking on our behalf to consider that, and we decided to do it. And in doing so, we decided that we should then try to make it as good as we possibly could, and to look at opportunities. And at the time, Housing New Zealand was operating the Housing Innovation Fund. So we applied to that fund in 2004, and that allowed us to then borrow money to then build a further 7 one-bedroom flats on the TCDC site, and we were able to in 2012. We've got a mortgage, of course, on that, the Ota Housing New Zealand. But it must be said that the flats, just to paint a picture for you, the 7 flats, the 7 bedsits we took over, they're 29 square metres each, which is pretty modest even by comparison with the flats in Thames and Whitianga. And they were in the concrete block construction, 1972 they were built. So we retrofitted them, we insulated them, we decorated them, and we made them as comfortable as we possibly can for the occupants. And then we built the 7 60 square metre each flats at the rear of the property. And in doing so, we then became a registered community housing provider. I believe we're the only ones in the eastern Waka registered. And what that means is that we are not allowed to charge more than 8% of market rent. And we've certainly charged less than 80% as it stands. But it then do with the flats as far as the income derive. So we're nothing like a market rent landlord. We're governed, and by being registered, we're also audited every year by central government as to the standard that we keep the flats, which we believe we keep in a very good standard. Not only are we a landlord, we also provide social services to the flats, to the tenants, I should say. And we're not funded for that. We do employ social workers, but that's all around Oranga Tamariki, which is specifically for kids. So the 14 residents of the 14 flats all are supported by our social workers. We erected a carport where we have our community van, where we offer transport to Thames so that the occupants and others in the community are able to get through to Thames. Of course, we have no public transport at this stage, although we hope that that will happen in the near future. So the bus, the van, it's run by volunteers. Got 35 volunteers operating the guild. Got 32 part-time employees. Not only do we operate flats and operate transport for people to come to Thames, we operate service to get people through to Thames Hospital, Waikato Hospital. We manage the refuse transfer station under a subcontract to Smart Environmental, also at the request of the Community Board. We've developed a news centre at the site called the Gold Mine. And as everybody, I think, around the table would agree, as volunteers tend to become older and they're restricted in what they're able or willing to do, the likes of local services such as the Food Bank and the Budget Advisory Service wanted to close up last year. They requested Kilt on, which we have, and that's operating very well. Local shop bazaar, they wanted to and just distribute cash locally. We were then taken on, which we have, and it's been very successful. This year we gave out $28,000 to 15 local groups, which is modest money, I know, but nonetheless makes groups who aren't necessarily incorporated, and that then limits the sorts of applications that they can make. It must be said, last year we spent or paid TCDC $35,000 in rates. Of those rates, 29,000 were for the tomato flats. And we would argue that with the amount that is going on in the community provided by Kilt, that we would hope that the council would seriously consider that as a charitable trust, locally being relied upon by, I don't overstep the market, or John Morrissey would agree, perhaps large communities and communities better off would be able to provide in other ways, that we should at least be considered to get a rates remission from TCDC. I hope that explains what it is that we're requesting. Bruce, over to you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for keeping within the 5 minutes. It's well done, Mike. Appreciate that. Are there any questions that folk would like to ask, John?
Thank you, Bruce. First of all, Mike, thank you for making yourself available today at such short notice, and thank you for the great work you do in our community up there. You broke up a little bit when you were speaking. Okay. And just for clarification, you said something about you're allowed to charge up to 80% of the market rental for those units, but you don't come close to charging that?
Yes, and John, the reason that we don't is that the people that we have in the flats, they are all on super. And when we looked at what the market rents are, which are very high because they're very often the holiday lettings then skew the market rates, we're sitting at $95 for the bed sits and $160 for the one bedroom flats. We're looking at increasing it, but it's going to be a modest increase. And frankly, we believe that that's about the most that the occupants can afford to pay. So we're governed by central government, but we've also got local conditions to take into account.
Okay. Just quickly, Mike, I think you used the word unique at the very beginning of your talk to us, and I believe you are unique. What do you see as the key differences between your organisation, Kilt, and others that may be providing pensioner housing?
Well, in the district, I could say that the other groups that formed in order to take over the flats that the council wanted to vest themselves of in 2003, they solely provide pensioner housing. And so there's a reasonable amount of income generated from that. And I don't think they have any debt. Thames, I think they built one flat in addition to the ones that they've got. And I don't think any were built onto the 9 over in Whitianga. By us increasing our housing stock to an extra 7, 100%, you could say, well, you took that on, and we did. But we've got a reasonable mortgage from Housing Corp, or Kāinga Order it's called now. And by supplying that, we're also looking at other social housing opportunities. We're always on the lookout to be able to do that. We also manage some emergency housing locally, working in with MSD to do it for people who are under the age of 65. So that's different to the other housing providers. And I think by having the social workers going in there, by providing the transport, what we're trying to do is provide a holistic approach rather than looking at housing as being one aspect of people. It's an important one. So we could argue we are unique.
Yeah. Could I just finish one more question? Yeah, that's great. Mike, I applaud you for looking at extending the housing you provide in Coromandel beyond what you already do. What is the housing situation like in Coromandel, Mike?
It's a terrible situation, and I know it's national, John, that housing is an issue. But what needs to be remembered here, 32% of the population of our ward is Māori. And Māori have the worst stats around all of those social indicators, as we know, throughout the country. So we have double the number of Māori proportionally in our ward. And I would have to say that in the communities of Kopataki, Haratonga and Manaia, we've got a large number of people who are living in not only sheds, but who are living in tents, who are living in old buses with no running water, no power, and who are in a dire position. So we're only scratching the surface with what we're doing here in Coromandel. And in endeavouring to provide more social housing, we're doing it in such a way that people are able to access it with dignity and that where it's affordable. But our social workers report to us some of the worst living conditions that you would find, and probably you would only find in Taitokoro and Tairāwhiti, Northland and the East Cape, that also has a high proportion of Māori. So it's bad.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Hey, listen, that's enough for me. Thank you for answering the questions. Keep up the good work. There may be some other questions from councillors.
You've got a question, please.
Mine was about for anyone that comes on hard times for whatever reason, and let's say on a benefit of some sort, if that benefit doesn't cover the necessities, such as housing, they do qualify for additional assistance by way of government accommodation grants. Do the folk that reside in these properties qualify for those?
No, they don't. Or I beg your pardon, they do. The income-related rent subsidy is one of the advantages that we have, and I think the figure is we're getting about $6,000 per year. The reason being, it's a great scheme, but there's a cap on how much there is. So we will contact Ministry of Social Development, and they will say they aren't in great enough need. Now, we've got people in the most dire of need and they don't qualify. So it's like one of those government schemes, it sounds great, but with the cap, literally you have to be in the most dire of circumstances. And so we've got several people who receive it, but it is a very big threshold to get over.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mike? Thank you.
So Mike, your people in your flats are over 65?
No, we brought the age group down to 60 because we saw that there were a lot of people who'd been...
Okay, don't need any more. Don't need any more. How many are married couples and how many are single?
We've only got one couple in there and everybody else is single. I'd have to say we've been surprised that we've not had more couples. We were hoping to get more couples, but the need has been with single people.
Thank you for that. Are there any final questions? Because I think our time's up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that and being available at this stage. I suspect that's very helpful for us as we then will later go into our public excluded session and deal with the appeal that you provided us with. So thank you for that, Mike. Thank you for your time, and I wish you well for the rest of the day. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Can I suggest, firstly, my gratitude for you letting me go for longer. Oh, sorry. Can I just?
Second.
Thank you.
Aye.
Is that to start or to finish? Okay, that's the aye. Okay. Look, can I suggest we do make a decent break? And it's 25 past. We come back at 11:45. And you've done well. Appreciate your efforts today. And we've got a wee bit to go. Thank you.
Got it.